Hello everyone, today I will be talking about my Ford Ranger 1994. Now, here are my shock absorbers. I'm just comparing the parts right now, my old and new guy, just showing you the quality and all the hardware that comes with it, making sure everything looks good, lines up. And I just want to show you guys the stark contrast, because I believe this shock absorber is 30 years old. Now here's the area we'll be working in, and you can see it right there in the back. Right here, I'm right now breaking all the torques on my lug nuts so that when I lift it up in the air, it's not so much of a pain. The wheel won't be spinning and it won't be in the way or being problematic. Just to make it easier down the road, and I recommend you do the same. Right here, I'm angling my jack up to a bolt that holds in a lot of the parts and hardware so I can start jacking it up, making sure it's all good, the lift's in the air. It's really hard to see. I wish there was a little bit more light, but if you get underneath your truck, you can see a bolt there. Make sure when you jack up your car, it's a very solid piece of metal, nothing that will bend. That's why I did this bolt. It's part of my subframe. And all that good stuff. Now, if you look here, I got a jack for the aft part of the truck so that if this jack in the front fails, and I did lower it onto it, here I'm taking off the tire completely to get access to the shock absorber in the back in that photo that you saw earlier. And it does help if you have a tool or an impact, because then you can technically skip all the steps that I did, but I only had a breaker bar. Also, I'm using a 3/4 on these lug nuts, and they come off very easily. They shouldn't be too difficult. If they're rusted, you have to replace them, sadly. Very easy. While we're here in this earlier part of the video and I'm taking out these lug nuts, before you do that, you should prime your shock absorber by pressing all the way down and releasing it. You should do that a minimum of 6 times because it lubricates the insides. So before you get all the tools and all that, just do that 6 times, make sure it's all good to go. I did mine off camera, but later on in the video you'll see me messing with the old one and how stuck it gets and how rigid it is. Right here, I'm right now just comparing the new part to the old part. This is something I'm doing before I actually showed any of that stuff I was messing with earlier, just to make sure it looks like it fit and make clearance and all that. 5/8, 9/16. Got that on there. And just in case if you didn't heard me, it was a 5/8 and a 9/16. The 9/16 on top, the 5/8 was on the bottom. Not all shock absorbers have that, like my new one didn't have that. Also, I'm showing this because I know a couple tricks. If you back off the thread and try to wiggle it back and forth like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and you keep going back and forth, sometimes you can loosen it. And if you notice, I did shoot some PB blaster up there, but I noticed I was struggling, and right there I'm showing you that it's a 3/4 for the nut on the bottom that connects to the radius arm. That one's very easy to see, and usually no one will struggle with that, especially if you mess with the wheel. That one's very simple and very easy. But this one up top, I actually ended up snapping it, and it just completely sheared on me, and that's how I got it out. Again, very clear. Make sure you double check your parts. Make sure all the new hardware looks similar. OEM and aftermarket, they aren't going to look the same, but make sure they're like similar length. But right here, actually, this is me showing you how bad my shock absorber is. See how it's not expanding? And then I'm going to pull it out, and I realize it's really hard to pull out versus going in, and it's super slow to come out. It's slower than new ones, much slower. Now, granted, it doesn't want to be too much faster than that, but I tried also pushing it at different lengths to see where it would get stuck, because that's not all the way in. And this shock absorber is bad for a lot of reasons. First of all, you can see the top snapped off completely. For here, you gotta compress it and squeeze it onto that bottom part radius arm, and then on the top, you gotta slide it back through the hole that you pulled it out of. But I'm right now doing the bottom guy, and he's torqued to 46 foot-pounds because it's in between 39 to 53, so you just kind of want to go in the middle of that. Then the top guy, which it's a lot harder to show him because my tools don't fit in there perfectly, you want to torque it down to 30 foot-pounds. Right here, I'm just tightening it by hand, though, trying to get it as much as I can, because you don't want to use a torque wrench for tightening stuff down until it's all the way done and all that good stuff. And make sure you pay attention how it looks like it fits into place. And now I'm just grabbing out my torque wrench to finalize its torque value. And this is something I ran into on this truck I want to show in this video, because I tried to go below and I have such a long torque wrench that I thought I could go up above, but I'm about to show you why you can't go up above. So you start below and you have like very little range to move it around, which is okay. See, I'm still able to go down a couple clicks, and then I go up top. And when I go up top here, I'm hitting the brake line and I'm not getting any clicks. Like, I'm moving it over and I'm just hitting the brake line over and over, and that's just no good. You don't want that to happen. So yeah, I got to go back underneath and finish off the torque from down below. Seems like it's not right tightening. Right here, I'm just finishing up the torque on the top nut. It is 30 foot-pounds with a 9/16. This torque wrench actually didn't fit up there, so I had to use a smaller torque wrench. I just used it off screen to be real quick and easy. So I thought it was all the way down, but that bolt I'm using is actually too shallow right there. So I started, and I noticed really soon that it just was skipping over and over again. I'm like, oh, I must have rounded it somehow, even though it's a brand new nut. But I pulled it off and I realized I just physically wasn't on the bolt, or I wasn't on the nut, because the bolt that goes up the center just was too long. So I had to go and grab a different torque wrench that was smaller. And also right here, you can see that the seal is like squeezed up onto the Ford Ranger. It's not so expanded. And then up top, you can see what I'm talking about with the bolt going all the way through and being too tall for that socket. Also, while here, preventive maintenance, check your bearings while you're here, check your grease, see if your rotors still spin, your brakes are good, all that good stuff. Just, double check things while you're here. Hey buddy, we're dirty. We're so dirty. We love you. Not right. No, I'm just wrapping it up here. This should be really easy for anybody. If you're able to take a wheel off, you can put a wheel on. I kind of was trying to get out of the camera's way, so I kind of struggled to get the wheel on because I just didn't want to do it, I guess, properly. But the wheels, their lug nuts are torqued to 100 foot-pounds. And then after that, safely lower your vehicle to the ground, give it a quick test. And as you can see, my little doggo's in the background, so I just kind of wanted to keep this footage. I was thinking about reshooting it, but he's just so cute in the background, and you know, it's hard to recreate those moments, so I just want to keep him in there. But do it in the star pattern, and one thing is, if you notice, I actually torque these out of order, and that's because I actually stopped recording for a split second, torqued one of the ones on the bottom, and then started going in the star pattern again. So basically, you want to do every other nut, which will make it so if there's 5 nuts, you go 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. You go in that pattern, and then you go all the way around the circle. But since I'm still up in the air, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roughly hand torque, hand tighten, and then torque it. And I have a digital torque wrench that's able to tell me what I'm at. I go roughly to 50 foot-pounds with it before I lower it. And then that's when I did all my final torques. And then now I'll go see you guys on the other side of the vehicle. I'll make that a separate YouTube video because these processes, they're very quick, but I like being in depth. So like one side is very different from the other. So on the driver's side, I actually like to go through the hood to access the top of the shock absorber bolts. But on this side, the only way you can do that is if you remove a bunch of stuff, and it's not really worth doing. And I like being in depth, so this is the front right passenger shock absorber removal and reinstallation. Hopefully this has helped you guys. It's very easy to do things like this, and it just blows my mind how much people will charge you to do something so simple. And granted, I don't know if newer vehicles tend to use shock absorbers. A lot of the vehicles I like to drive have always used them, and they're super easy to replace. And they're super cheap. I got 4 shock absorbers for roughly $70 off of Amazon. You don't need to get the big fancy high-end stuff, especially with like these older vehicles. Like, they're super easy to work on, and in reality the new vehicles are easy to work on. You just need to know what tools you need. So like when our kids or the next generation grows up, they're going to be looking at cars and they're going to be like, well, the things our dad grew up with are so much easier, like a 2015 Chevy Equinox, you know, like that's new. I have a 1994 Ford Ranger. It's really easy to work on because all the tools are so easy to get and they're so easy to come by. And yeah, you know, if you don't think you can do this, just look how easy this was. And the hardest part was me recording it. Like that's really it. It could have took me 20 minutes to do both shock absorbers, but then I decided to make a video with it, so it took me an hour to do one shock absorber on one side. I'm gonna wrap up the video here, guys. I hope to see you in the next one. Please leave comments for what you would like to see, because I plan on taking this Ford Ranger and upgrading it and doing a bunch of fun stuff for me. I've already done a bunch of really big projects on it, so I wish I could have made videos on that. Like, I've already replaced a starter. I just swap out the front diff because some shafts broke. So if you guys want to see something, I would love to do more things, and especially if it's something I don't need to do. And my buddies also have cars, so if there's like a specific car out there, like let's say 2017 Ford Focus or 2015 Equinox, or just random cars, I know a lot of people, and I might be able to let me use their cars for me to diagnose and work on said so problem, or how you would approach said so problem with said so videos. Any comment help, any questions help. I love cars, and I'll see you guys in the next one.